Welcome, everybody, again to Side Hustle Central, where we go over side hustles and we figure out ways to make you guys extra money. Today, I have with me a very special guest, and probably the first person that I found out actually did a side hustle and made it into a living. I have with me Jenny Wooten.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So, right now, as your side hustle, from my understanding, you flip furniture, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So how did you get started into this? Because I see this out there, especially on Marketplace. I don't see it a lot on eBay or any of like the online sites, but I see it a lot on like Marketplace and local markets. How did you find out about this? How did you really get started into this and then really pick up from there?
Yeah. So my whole journey with furniture flipping started in November of 2021. So a couple years ago.
Okay.
So I was working full time for a chiropractor, and I had been in chiropractic for about 6 years. So I enjoyed the stability of that job, but it definitely wasn't something I wanted to do forever. And I always kind of knew that I had like a creative side to me, but I could never quite like figure out what that was.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about it a lot. And one night I was just driving home from work and I actually just prayed about it. I was like, God, help me to just find something creative that I enjoy and could make some money. And it wasn't something I was like dwelling on necessarily, but I just was like curious about it. And just a couple of days later, I was on Instagram and I saw this girl flipping furniture. And I just, like, in my head, I just thought I could do that. So I just kind of jumped full feet in and I started researching it and figuring it out. And within like a week or so, I flipped my first piece. So,
Wow. So you literally discovered it.
mhm.
You were kind of like, I have this creative side. I want to do something. And then you discovered it. And within a week, you had already gone through with it and done it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
That is a very fast turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you did this is while you were working as a chiropractor assistant.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so when you flipped that first piece of furniture, what was it?
So I went to Goodwill
Okay.
and I had no idea what I was looking for. I actually found like the tiniest side table ever. Like it was just
Gotcha.
like tiny, didn't even have a drawer. And I was like way overthinking it, but I bought it. It was $10 and I painted it like a sage green color. And I remember just being like obsessed with it though, because it was like kind of orange, older tone. And when I painted it, it looked like brand new. And I was just like obsessed with my transformation. So I ended up posting it on Marketplace for $30 and I sold it within a couple days. So I think just that was a big push point for me because I remember getting that $30, and the lady who bought it loved it. And I just remember feeling like so happy that someone liked my work and I made $20.
So looking back at that now, you flip your first piece and you sell it for $30. Would you say you underpriced that?
Um, Probably a little bit,
Okay.
considering I spent $50 on the paint.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But at the same time, it really was like the tiniest side table I've ever seen. I don't even think it was real wood. It was just, but it really was the push I needed. So yeah.
And so that sage green color, from what I've seen on your other flips and just like what you've posted on social, it seems to be a pretty common theme of having those greens. Is that just like a personal favorite of yours, or is that more of like that's what's in the market right now instead of, like in the 70s where everything was orange and blue and these bright colors? Is that like that green color? Is that just what's in? Is that kind of what's trending?
I would say it's definitely a trending color. It's kind of like a neutral, but it definitely has a little bit more color than just like your normal tans, grays, whatever. I've sold a lot of dressers with that sage green color for nurseries, because parents can use them for either gender,
Yep.
and it's just a great neutral color. And I also just like the brand. It is Beyond Paint. And so I can use, a good brand with a good color. So yeah, I use that one a lot.
Yep. And we're not sponsored by Beyond Paint. It's not something we're sponsored by, but little plug in there.
Yes.
Um, okay, so you did this first flip, and then after you did that first one, how long did it take you to do like your next one and your next one? Like, was it a process where you did one and you're like, hey, I really like this. When I get some time, I'll do it again, or was it like, I love this thing. I'm going out today and getting it.
Yeah, it was definitely more like I'm ready to just do this
Mm-hmm.
again. Especially because I still had a ton of paint left over and I was just like, I want to make more money. Like it's kind of addicting, if you resell stuff.
Yep.
It's very addicting once you start making money.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I immediately went, I think I went to Salvation Army and I got a bookshelf next and sold that. I think I made like $40 off that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kept kind of amping things up. But by the end of my first month flipping furniture, I had made $540, just totally
Wow.
part
Yeah.
time. So that was a cool thing to like see, even though like I kind of barely knew what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I was still able to make a profit off of it.
Yeah. I mean, when you go from nothing to an extra like $500 a month,
Mm-hmm.
especially doing something that doesn't take a lot of time and you enjoy doing it,
Mm-hmm.
like I totally understand when you say it's addicting to resell stuff, because I sell on eBay, and so finding something good and you see it and you're like, I can make so much money off of this, and you just have that like, I don't know, like a dopamine hit,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, this is a great buy. I'm gonna sell it. I'm gonna make money, and it's like that whole process of putting it out. It is very addicting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's more like furniture flippers. I know there's couch flippers out there. People who do similar things where it's like when you find one and you're like, I can make this much on it. It's a very good feeling.
Yeah.
It's almost like scary
Mm-hmm.
how fun it is and how addicting it is, because it's just like I just want to go back and keep going and keep going, and when's my next one? It's like chasing that high constantly. Um, so you made $500 in your first month, and how long after that? Because you do this full time now, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So how long after that did it take you of flipping furniture to quit your job and do this full time?
Yeah. So after that first month, I remember going out for dinner with my husband and we were just talking. It was my birthday, and we were talking and about our kind of next year and what we wanted it to look like. And I just was going on and on about how much I loved furniture and loved flipping it. And he actually was the one who was like, "Why don't we get you doing this full time? Let's get you doing
Mm-hmm.
this from home, like maybe a year from now." And that was totally like the encouragement I needed to be like, maybe I could do that. And so that was again November 2021. So I really started working towards that. Like within a year, I was going to quit my job.
Mm-hmm.
So going into 2022, I mean, if anyone's ever worked, a full time job and then they're trying to start something on the side, like it's a lot of work.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like crazy. I think looking back at that whole year, 2022, trying to do all of that, working a full time job, starting this furniture business,
Mm-hmm.
as well as, being a wife, a homemaker, friend to people, keeping up with family, church, like everything. That was a big year. Um, but that I definitely think that the sacrifice of it was totally worth it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I remember like my lunch hours, I would just be running around Lincoln trying to find furniture, and then I would come home from work at night and I would like sometimes be in the garage till like midnight just working and trying to get stuff flipped.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't so much that we were like desperate for money at all. It was just like I was trying to see if I could make this business work. So it was actually May of 2022 that I let my employers know by the end of the year I was going to be done. And I gave them a really big notice
Mm-hmm.
just because I wanted to kind of put it in my mind that this was like a real thing. I was going to
Yeah.
do it and kind of use those next 7 months as like a transition period.
Mm-hmm.
So I hit some months in 2022 where I was literally making the same amount of money flipping furniture as I was at my full-time job.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was doing that, part-time flipping.
Mm-hmm.
So those months were what really kind of pushed me to feel like, okay, this can work.
Yeah.
So it got to the end of 2022 and I quit my job. And it was so scary, but it was,
Yep.
yep, it was totally worth it. So from the beginning, it was just over a year that I actually ended up quitting.
Hmm. And when you did that, were you so by the time you ended, because you were making, so you're working full time as a chiropractic assistant, and
Mm-hmm.
then you were working part time flipping furniture, but making the same amount of money. So when you ended, were you actually like overproducing your um, in your side hustle, essentially, more than you were in your full time job? And that's like you were super comfortable with it, like, hey, I'm making more money than I do working all day, and then now we can just go with it.
There are definitely months where that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With flipping furniture, there's definitely months where, things are higher than others.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a little slower, like around Christmas and stuff like that. So, I hit months where I was definitely making more. And that is another thing that propelled me to feel like, yes, this is
Gotcha.
possible.
And so it kind of evens out like through the end of the year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely.
It's the same thing with eBay reselling.
Hmm.
There are months, I think in I don't even remember what it was. I think October maybe.
Hmm.
It was either September or October. Um, like I was dead all summer, no sales going on. I'd sell maybe one or two things a month, and I kind of just I mean everybody's outside.
Right.
They're not worried about, hey, it's cold, I'm just gonna cruise online, or we're making changes.
Hmm.
People don't really care about that at those times,
Hmm.
unless it's like a seasonal sport, and I have sporting goods that people want. Um, but then it was like September, October hit, and I just like tripled my previous 3 months in 1 month,
Right.
and it's like that seasonal thing. Um, it the first year I started, because I've been selling eBay stuff for a little over a year,
Mhm.
and so last year when I did it, I started out in September, and then I September was pretty slow, October was pretty slow, November was pretty slow, and then December hit, and I was just selling stuff left and right,
Mhm.
and it was just like Christmas items. I ended up getting like a bunch of toys and whatnot, and so it was like Christmas was really busy for me, and then January hit and it was dead, and there was just nothing to sell. So I could imagine, especially with like people moving or prime baby time when
Mhm.
a lot of people are having kids. I'm assuming springtime is probably a pretty busy time.
Definitely.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then do you see that like being busy differently also when you're buying items too? Like you see more furniture and better quality furniture at different times of the year than others, like spring cleaning or
Mhm.
fall cleaning, everybody's getting rid of their stuff. Do you see like the differences between how you're sourcing items?
I would say yes, definitely. Springtime, summertime is the best to source stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it is because there's better stuff, but also there's just more options.
Yep.
Lots of estate sales, garage sales everywhere. And it's also just a little bit easier, if I do want to drive out of town or
Mm-hmm.
something, just not to have to worry about the weather. So, yeah, springtime, summertime is the best for sourcing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And um, where do you find most of your items? Like if you were to have a chart of, I
Mhm.
find all my stuff here and here and here. Where are like the biggest platforms that you find everything from?
Yeah. So I prefer to find most of my stuff at estate sales
Hmm.
and thrifting.
Okay.
Of course, garage sales, but that's not like a all year type thing. Marketplace is actually and Craigslist are my lowest
Hmm.
ones to find stuff. I do find stuff every now and then on those platforms, but it's very hard for me to like not have like see it in person, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I like to see things in person. I like to inspect things, and sometimes that can be a little bit hard on marketplace. You kind of have to
Hmm.
commit to something before you buy it. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah, everybody always asks for, because yeah, you ask for a deposit or
right.
some sort of commitment, because then they might have to get off work, and
Hmm.
yeah, I'll meet meet you here, and or if they don't want it to be seen at their house, well, I gotta load it up, and I'll meet you in a parking lot.
Right.
Yeah, so I totally understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say like on Facebook there are just like more people actually reselling stuff too? So like, if you go to Goodwill, it's stuff that people are kind of throwing out.
Mm-hmm.
But then Facebook, would you say it's like more they're trying to, hey, I want to make a profit on this?
So, in my opinion, for furniture,
Hmm.
especially in Lincoln, there's not a lot of people reselling furniture here.
Gotcha.
I know probably less than 10 people,
Really?
even in between Lincoln and like some surrounding cities.
Hmm.
For a while, it was very popular. Actually, when I first started, it was a lot more competition, but it has dwindled a lot over the past year or two.
Hmm.
I'm not actually entirely sure why, but my like competition as far as selling is very minimal
Hmm.
in this like size of city. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Um, are there areas of the country that are big into that, like that you've seen?
Mm.
Because you were saying you saw people flipping on social media before. Have you seen like a trend of where people do flipping more often? Because I know like in real estate, there's certain markets that are just like it's hot here. There's a
Mm.
lot of stuff moving around. Um, would you say there are certain areas that are more popular than others with flipping furniture?
I definitely think there are other areas. I would say any bigger city definitely probably has a lot more flippers.
Hmm.
Um, but I know some cities, it's not as popular. Like even Denver, I have some family there,
Really?
and it's not like a big thing from my understanding there.
Hmm.
So I think it just kind of depends. But I know, like, thrifting in general is kind of a trend right now.
Yep.
And so, there's a lot, there are a lot of resellers
Hmm.
out there.
Yeah, that's very surprising, Denver.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Denver's kind of like that, like it's artsy, and
Right.
everything's trending there, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you would get a lot of that like multicolored furniture that would be really popular there.
Right. Absolutely.
Maybe it's the snow or
Yes.
something. People don't want
That's
to
true.
people don't want to move stuff around in it.
Yes.
Um, are you familiar with like Gary V?
No.
So Gary V is a guy that I think he made like thrifting and reselling very popular on eBay.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would say I saw it from him, but when you talk about like thrifting as a trend, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, you go find these items and you resell them, whatever it is. Gary V is like one of those that kind of started that. I believe he started a podcast that was called Trash Talk, and it was talking about him, how he used to make his money. He would go to garage sales and go thrifting, and then resell stuff on eBay. And now
Mm-hmm.
it turned into a huge like trend where people are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to garage sales and barter with people, um, and then that I'm gonna take it and resell it on eBay. Like I see that stuff all the time. Facebook Marketplace, eBay. You
Mm-hmm.
find certain items, and yeah, I'm gonna fix it up real quick, or I'm gonna clean it, and then like sell it on Facebook. Um, and then there's a few other guys that like also made stuff like that popular. I know a guy that I follow, Ryan Pineda, is a very popular guy, and he essentially like laid the foundation for couch flipping, which is similar but like a whole different trend, I guess. Instead of like repainting it and everything, you just clean it, pick it up, clean it, drop it off,
Right.
which would be a little weird. But he was saying
Mm-hmm.
he was making thousands a month doing that instead of doing his full time job. And I do hear a lot of people that are now kind of using side hustles as a supplemental income, and using those almost as a full time job too, which is kind of the point of this podcast. Also, is if there's I kind of have a heart for like high school students too when they're coming out of high school and then like going into college, and what am I gonna do, and how am I gonna make my money, because it's sad you can't live on a McDonald's income anymore.
Right.
And so you have to have something supplemental. And just about everybody I talk to says, yeah, I make crafts, or I groom dogs on the side, or
Mm-hmm.
I sell at a farmer's market, whatever it may be, it seems like people need that. So as far as the actual process to flip furniture, what is the full on process from like finding the item to selling it to if you deliver it, and then what is kind of the timeline with that? How long does it typically take you to do all of it?
Yeah, so if I'm needing to start from square one and source furniture, again, I love thrifting or estate sales. Those are my number one go-tos for finding furniture. So let's say I go to a thrift store, there's probably something in the back of my mind I'm looking for. If that's like a dresser, I might be looking for side tables. I kind of buy based off my mood a little bit too. It's like, what am I up for? What am I feeling creative about? And so I kind of shop looking for that too. Just because everything I want to buy, I want to be inspired to do as well. I don't want to buy anything and have it sitting in my garage forever. So let's say I go to the thrift store and I find like a 9-drawer dresser. So my number one step is like just inspect it like nobody's business. I take so much time inspecting things before I buy them. So if it's 9-drawer dresser, I'm taking every drawer out and I'm, got my flashlight. I'm looking, I'm making sure, all the drawer tracks are there.
And you do this at the
I do it at the store.
Okay,
I'm
gotcha.
like on the floor
yeah.
at the store.
Do people look at you funny like,
oh yeah,
what is this girl doing laying down looking under the dresser?
They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just making sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure because I am comfortable with certain things, but like I don't love fixing things. So if I find a dresser that I like and it has 5 broken drawer tracks, that's going to weigh into my decision if I want this or not. So there's things I have to consider. I got to look for, molds. I've got to look for water damage. Does it smell like cigarettes? There's just a lot of things. And all of those things I can deal with. It's just, do I want to deal with them?
Right.
And do I have the capacity? Things like that. So I inspect it so thoroughly before I even buy it. And so when I am buying it, I'm 120% sure I want it,
Gotcha.
So let's say I go ahead and I buy the 9-drawer dresser. So then at that point I would bring it home. And again, this is my full-time job. So if I am looking to flip a piece, I'm going to get to work on it right away. So, my day will probably be spent, cleaning it, sanding it, priming it. I'll get as far as I possibly can. Usually I kind of make myself stop at a certain point, and that's a good point to stop when, maybe the primer or the paint is drying, something like that.
Gotcha.
So then I usually try to flip a piece within 1 to 2 days.
Okay.
But again, because it's my full-time job, that's all I'm doing for those 2 days. So once it gets flipped, I immediately get good pictures of it, get it staged, and I put it on Marketplace. So people can pick it up like the day after it is done drying if they want.
Yeah. That's a very quick turnaround.
Yes, definitely. And I just always tell people like if I do paint it, I just say, hey, like I just painted this. It's curing for 30 days, and I give them a little extra paint,
Gotcha.
just while it's hardening and stuff like that. So I'm very like upfront with people. But the thing about it too is like on Marketplace, everybody knows what I'm doing. So they know like this is probably freshly redone and like it works out really well. But I try to kind of have a revolving door of pieces going in and out just based off of like my storage space. And that's just kind of how I prefer it. I would say I sell a little bit more quantity at kind of a lower price point, while some other furniture flippers probably sell things at a higher price point, just not as much.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of it just is how you want to do it, just kind of how it balances out.
Have you thought about like changing price points just to, I don't know, kind of experiment with it? Like if you're, let's just say, like for a 9-drawer dresser, when you flip it, what is kind of like the average price that you list it at? Like a trend that you see is a good price point for you?
Yeah, so kind of depending on the style of it, for like a 9-drawer, I would probably be looking at like $350 to $425.
And would you say like some pieces you could potentially, so like you list it at like, let's just say $350,
Mhm.
Do you think you could list it at, let's say, 600 and it would still sell?
I think it would definitely sell.
Hmm.
Um, I think it would take a lot more time.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
there's a sacrifice that comes with it because I do know furniture flippers who say, never drop your prices,
Hmm.
just wait for the right person to come along. But that waiting game, I mean, some people are waiting 6 months
Yeah.
for something to leave, and I can't personally afford that, just space wise.
Hmm.
And then if you are spending a lot of money with your investment on it, like you're waiting for that money to come back in.
Right.
So there's a lot to kind of think about, and I think there's pros and cons to both ways of doing it.
Hmm. It's kind of like, do you want $300 today or do
Mhm.
you want $600 in 3 months?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I'd say that's pretty similar on like eBay selling too.
Hmm.
Just if anybody lists anything on eBay, there's going to be items, especially name brand items. I'm assuming there's name brand furniture
Yes.
that
Hmm.
sells a lot faster.
Hmm.
Um, when people see that brand, they're just like, "Oh my gosh, this is great! This is a great
Hmm.
deal. I'm going to go for it." Um, so it's the same with like eBay items. If you find a good item and you can get it for super cheap and it's a name brand, everybody knows it, you can list that for a little bit more expensive. For example, for me, I found a pair of Reebok shoes.
Hmm.
They were brand new. They listed for like $110 on Amazon and some other like sites that sell shoes online. I was able to sell them for 85, which is very good for reselling on an eBay, like on an eBay item. Most of the
Yeah.
time, I'm selling only like 50% of what the actual profit is.
Hmm.
But since they were name brand, it was like they sold the same day and they sold for exactly what I asked for them. But on the flip side, it's like there's also these other items that they're not a name brand, and you have to it might sell for $150 online. There's a vacuum that I got. It was a like a $200 vacuum that it's like a knockoff of a Dyson, and I was like, heck yes, this will sell super fast. I listed it for, it was like new in the box, all the wrapping still there. I listed it for like $125. I'm like, this is going to sell right away. It took like 3 months to sell it. And it
Wow.
wasn't until some guy offered me like $45 for it. And it was like, I still made some money on
Yeah.
it, but like, it was because it wasn't that name brand.
Yeah.
And you had to, I was asking for a higher price, and people aren't going on eBay to buy at new prices. People are,
Hmm.
and they're not doing, I would assume they're not doing the same on Marketplace looking for furniture. They're like, I don't want to pay new price for this. I want to get a good deal. I want to feel
Hmm.
good about buying it. So I would assume it'd be the same way. You'd have to wait for somebody to come along. If you're like, hey, here's a used piece that I redid and it's
Hmm.
at a new price, it takes a special customer to find that and be like, oh, this is the perfect one for me. I'm willing to buy it.
Yes, absolutely. And especially if I'm redoing something, like I have to think about how much my investment was.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm spending money on paint and supplies and my time, I have to account that into my sales price.
Gotcha.
So that's a huge thing. Something I do a lot though, if I do find, just furniture with a great brand,
Mm-hmm.
is sometimes I don't redo it. I just try to resell it.
Really?
Yeah, so
Okay.
those vintage brands, very into like mid-century modern pieces, and those are just like gold right now. Everybody's after those.
Hmm.
So if I can even just find a great brand and it's being severely undersold, I'll just resell it.
Mm-hmm.
And people love that, because I went and took the time and I found it, and now I'm reselling it, and
Gotcha.
it's vintage. It's not in
Mm-hmm.
perfect condition, but they're willing to pay for it, just based
Interesting.
off the brand and the style.
Yeah. Do you like clean it? Like if you clean it up and but you don't like stain it or paint it or anything?
Yeah, so I clean it, clean the inside of it,
Mm-hmm.
everything, and then I just resell it. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
How much when you do these pieces, have you lost money on any pieces? Have you had one that's just like, I want to get rid of it, so I'm gonna severely discount it because nobody's buying it?
So as of yet, I've never lost any money on a piece.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a good track
So
record.
I've always had a profit.
Yeah.
But there's definitely been some pieces where I've overspent in the beginning. So
Okay.
that's the number one thing. Like if you are trying to look into furniture flipping, like you have to be so careful how much you spend on the original piece. My maximum for myself is $100.
Okay.
I will not spend more than 100. Now,
Gotcha.
some furniture flippers, I know that they're spending $300 on something, and then they're selling it for like 600.
Yeah.
For me, I just can't do that. I just feel like that's crazy to put that much into a piece. So $100 is my absolute max budget on a piece. But that just maximizes your profit. You know, this summer I ended up coming across this Kroller is the brand, a dresser set, and it was $50 for the set. So $25 each. And I just decided to split the set up, flipped both of them separately. I sold one of them for $325. I sold the other one for $225.
Yeah.
So $500 profit. But my expenses on these pieces were just so low, you know, because my original expenses were $25 per piece. So that just puts you in such a great position to make a good profit.
Do you think you'd ever get to the point where you'd spend a lot on a piece? Like, are there brands out there? Because I've seen furniture that's like, hey, here's a dresser for $3,000. If you came across something like that and it was like, hey, it makes sense because I can sell it for 3 times the money, would you drop like $300 on it?
I think I definitely would. I think the more my own market increases, and if I ever decided to do like, you know, an Etsy shop or something like that where you could sell to a broader audience, even right now, like selling in Lincoln, Nebraska, like I would say, oh my goodness, a lot, like not the majority, but definitely a good amount of people that buy from me are not from Lincoln.
Really?
Yeah, I would say a very large amount of them are from Omaha, Iowa. I've gotten some people from Kansas
that will come up
that
here
drive
and grab
here
a
and
piece.
they get
Really?
stuff. Yeah, it's crazy.
Dang.
But just thinking about furniture, it is a very like what I'm doing is kind of niche, you know.
Yeah.
And especially
Yeah,
with my
absolutely.
style, and so that's only going to appeal to a certain amount of people. So it's cool that it's like growing, but I can only imagine that if you were on a platform like Etsy or something like that.
That's I'm not super familiar with how Etsy works, but do you know, like, if you were to move over to Etsy and start selling on that, is that location based where it's kind of like marketplace, and then you can sell it and people know you and can come to your location, or is that like selling online?
So I think you can do both. I believe you can do local pickup and ship. So
Gotcha.
the whole thing would be just like to ship a dresser. I can't even like wrap my head around
Yeah,
that.
I know.
So
there's been some stuff on eBay where I'm surprised people pay for the shipping for it.
yeah.
Because it's just, they pay more for the shipping than for the item. Given I put a really good price on the item, but there was a tote of paintball stuff that somebody bought, and it was like $400-$500 worth of paintball stuff that I sold for $130, but then they paid like $90 for shipping on it.
Oh my goodness.
And which was just, it was crazy to me because I'm like, if you offer me a lower amount, I'll sell it just to like combat the shipping.
Right.
Because you end up paying double the amount just for shipping. And I'd be interested to know what shipping is like for a dresser. Or like, I would assume a nightstand or something like that you could probably package up pretty easily.
Right.
And it would just, be a decent amount to ship. But like putting a full dresser and like get it into a moving truck, or that'd be crazy to like ship that across the country.
Yeah, I think I would be a little terrified, at least for the first like 20 times. Yes.
So in your future, where do you see this going? What do you kind of foresee yourself doing? Are you going to stay at this level? Are you going to try to expand? What are your goals right now? Are you trying to build social? What is kind of your thoughts for the future? If you were to, the cliche remark, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Right.
Where do you kind of see yourself going with this? And where do you see yourself taking this?
Hmm. Yeah, so I definitely feel like, I mean, my whole life I've wanted to be a mom, and
Mm-hmm.
so me and my husband are definitely, we talk about having kids, and we definitely will someday. And something else I've always known about myself though is I've always loved making money, and
Yeah.
I've always known I'm gonna want to do something while I'm a mom.
Gotcha.
So I think it's just a blessing that this has come into my life, because I really feel like I can get myself super established right
Hmm.
now, just as a business, and get a platform going, before having kids. But it's really cool because like other women I follow on social media are totally flipping furniture and they're pregnant, or they are,
Gotcha.
raising their kids at home, they're
Hmm.
homeschooling. And I think it's so cool that it can simultaneously happen while flipping furniture. So that's a huge goal of mine right now, is just to focus on getting really established
Hmm.
as my business. And then, just when we do have kids, it's just that much easier to continue on in that. As far
Gotcha.
as other goals go, though, I think I'm just establishing my style
Hmm.
more and being flexible with that. And I'm kind of open to anything. I'm just like allowing myself to be very flexible with the whole thing. And that's been a really healthy thing for me this past year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just kind of like wherever it takes you.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's good. Like that would be a really good thing in the future to be able to homeschool and still flip furniture.
Yeah.
And it's like, the ideal goal is like you want to do something not because you need the money, but
Hmm.
because you want to do it. And I think that would be a really cool thing to do, especially if you are homeschooling and you have your kids like, hey, this is how you do some woodworking. This is how you paint things. This is,
Right.
and that's part of your homeschooling.
Put them to work. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then at the same time, it's like, here's how you can make some money with it. And,
Hmm.
that's a skill that as they grow up, they at least know that. If nothing else, it's like, well, I know how to do this.
Right.
So that would be a really cool thing to do.
Hmm.
And I know your husband is a musician,
Hmm.
which is also kind of I understand he's been kind of back and forth between bands and different, like, I guess, going on the road and everything.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a side hustle in itself, too,
Hmm.
where, he's traveling a lot. But when you guys have kids, is it going to be kind of as you foresee it? Is it going to be a little more like, hey, let's calm everything down and stay at home a little more?
Yeah, I would say in some regards it would have to be
Yeah.
a bit more. Um, I am already a big homebody,
Yeah.
so it's not going to be too big of a deal for me.
Hmm.
And actually, he's a homebody too, but he does have to travel quite a bit. But I think it will definitely, change how our lives look. But I just feel like, yeah, these next few years, just kind of getting ourselves set up for all of that is going to be just really beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be great.
Yes.
Well, I think that's about all that I got for you. It was really great talking to you today. Um, like, we've known each other for quite a while,
Hmm.
way back in the days of, we had a big friend group at church
Yeah.
and we all went out to eat and people were dating each other and we were just meeting each other. Um, because I think I still remember like the first few days you came to church,
Mhm.
and everybody in our friend group was like, "Hey, you should talk to her, and you should talk. This guy
Yes.
should talk to her." That was a long time ago.
I
So,
remember those days.
but
Yeah.
it's great to finally be able to sit down and like go over
Mhm.
details with it, because I'm super interested in seeing people take a side hustle and make it into a full time job or see some success. Just because I've had so much failure in my past, it's great to see other people that have like, hey, I got this figured out and I'm just like
Mhm.
cruising with it now.
Mhm.
So for all the listeners that are following this, where can everyone find you on all the platforms?
Yeah. So currently I'm on Facebook and Instagram,
Hmm.
and my name is anu_ by Jen.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at.
And on Facebook, is that like when you sell on Marketplace, does it go under that, I guess, alias, that name?
It does not. It goes under my personal
Okay,
name. So
gotcha.
if you're interested in buying things, you'll just have to DM me on
Yeah,
Instagram
gotcha.
or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how much inventory do you usually keep?
Right now I have one thing.
Okay. Yeah, so
But
it moves fast.
it moves really quickly.
Gotcha.
But usually I try to have like 3 or 4 things every week. I try to get like 3 or 4
Mhm.
new things in. So yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that is great. I'm glad that you were able to come and glad we could figure out the audio and
Yes.
everything.
Thank you so much for
Finally,
having
yeah,
me.
thank you so much. And hopefully we can do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, guys, that is the show. And we will see you again next time. We'll get another guest on the podcast that has taken a side hustle, either consistently doing the side hustle or turned it into a reality of a full time job. And we'll teach you guys how to make a little more money and keep interviewing guests. Thank you guys for watching.